Alone in park. Rachel Winters should have listened to her instincts. But after 3 months of unemployment and mounting bills, when the park maintenance supervisor offered her the night shift position at Riverside Park, she couldn't afford to refuse. The pay was decent. The work seemed simple enough, and she'd be alone, which suited her fine after the chaos of her last job. What he hadn't mentioned was why the position kept opening up. It was Rachel's 5th night on the job when things started to feel wrong. She arrived at 11 p.m., just as the last joggers and dog walkers were leaving. The automare carried a chill that bit through her jacket as she locked the main gate behind them. Riverside Park sprawled across 80 acres of woodland, walking trails, and open fields along the dark ribbon of the Cumberland River. In daylight, it was peaceful. At night, it became something else entirely. Rachel's duties were straightforward. Patrol the grounds hourly, check for vandalism or trespassers, maintain the restrooms, and ensure all gates remained locked until 5 a.m. She had a golf cart, a flashlight, pepper spray, and a radio that connected to the police station. The supervisor had assured her she'd be fine. But as Rachel drove her cart along the main path that first hour, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The park was too quiet. No rustling of small animals in the underbrush. No owl calls. No wind through the trees despite the branches swaying overhead. Just silence, heavy, expectant silence that pressed against her eardrums. "Stop it," Rachel muttered to herself. "You're being ridiculous. It's just a park." She completed her first patrol without incident and returned to the small maintenance office near the parking lot. The building was barely more than a shed with a desk, a space heater, and a coffee maker that looked older than Rachel herself. She poured herself a cup of lukewarm coffee and sat down to do some paperwork. That's when she heard it, the sound of a child laughing. Rachel's head snapped up. The laughter was faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere outside. She checked her watch. 12:47 a.m. No children should be in the park. No one should be in the park. She grabbed her flashlight and stepped outside. "Hello? Park's closed. You need to leave." The laughter came again, closer now, from the direction of the old playground near the river. Rachel's skin prickled. She keyed her radio. "Unit 7 to dispatch. I've got possible trespassers in the park. Checking it out." Static crackled back at her, but no response came. Rachel frowned and tried again. Nothing but dead air. "Great," she whispered, gripping her flashlight tighter. She climbed into her golf cart and drove toward the playground, her headlights bouncing along the narrow path. The playground emerged from the darkness like a skeletal creature, all angles and shadows. The swings hung motionless despite the breeze that had suddenly picked up. The slides gleamed dully in her flashlight beam. And sitting on the merry-go-round, perfectly still, was a little girl. Rachel's breath caught. The child couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, wearing a white dress that seemed to glow in the darkness. Her long hair hung in her face, and she sat with her hands folded in her lap, not moving, not speaking. "Hey, sweetie," Rachel called out, trying to keep her voice gentle despite the unease crawling up her spine. "What are you doing out here? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge Rachel's presence. Rachel approached slowly, her flashlight trained on the child. "It's really late. Honey, you shouldn't be here alone. Can you tell me your name?" Still nothing. Rachel was close enough now to see that the girl's dress wasn't just white. It was old-fashioned, something from decades past, with lace and ruffles that no modern child would wear. And her skin had an odd pallor, almost translucent in the harsh flashlight beam. "Sweetie, I need you to." The girl's head snapped up, and Rachel stumbled backward with a gasp. The child's eyes were entirely black. No white, no irises, just pools of absolute darkness that seemed to swallow the light. And when she smiled, her mouth opened far too wide, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. "Want to play?" The girl whispered, her voice layered and wrong, like multiple people speaking at once. Rachel ran. She sprinted back to her golf cart, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Behind her, she could hear the merry-go-round spinning, its rusty squeals cutting through the night. And beneath that sound, the little girl's laughter, multiplying, echoing from every direction at once. Rachel threw herself into the cart and gunned the accelerator, not caring where she was going, just needing to get away. The path ahead twisted through dense trees, and her headlights created dancing shadows that seemed to reach for her. The radio crackled to life, making her jump. But instead of the dispatcher's voice, what came through was that laughter, dozens of children laughing, overlapping, building into a cacophony that made Rachel's teeth ache. She yanked the radio from her belt and threw it out of the cart. Her phone was in her pocket, and she fumbled for it with shaking hands, trying to dial 911 while keeping the cart steady. No signal. Of course there was no signal. Rachel's headlights caught something ahead, figures standing on the path. She slammed on the brakes, and the cart skidded to a stop. Her blood turned to ice. There were children everywhere, dozens of them, maybe more, standing silent and still along both sides of the path. All different ages, all wearing clothing from different eras. Some looked like they were from the 1950s, others from even earlier. And they all had those same black, bottomless eyes. "No," Rachel whispered. "No, no, no, this isn't real. This can't be real." The children began to move, stepping onto the path, surrounding her cart. They didn't walk normally. Their movements were jerky, wrong, like marionettes controlled by an amateur puppeteer. "Play with us," they chanted in unison. "Stay with us. Join us." Rachel abandoned the cart and ran into the woods, branches whipping at her face and arms. She could hear them following, their small feet pattering through the undergrowth, their laughter building to a fever pitch. She didn't know where she was going. The darkness between the trees was absolute, her flashlight beam seeming to barely penetrate it. Roots grabbed at her feet, and more than once she nearly fell. Behind her, the children kept coming, tireless, relentless. Rachel burst out of the trees into an open field and immediately recognized where she was. The old section of the park that had been closed for years after they'd found a mass grave. During construction of a new pavilion, workers had unearthed the remains of 37 children, all buried between 1890 and 1920. The investigation had revealed they were victims of an orphanage fire that the church had covered up, burying the bodies in secret to avoid scandal. The field was where the orphanage had stood. And now Rachel understood. These weren't just ghosts. These were those children, trapped here, angry, hungry for something they'd been denied in life. Companionship. "I'm sorry," Rachel sobbed, still running even though her lungs burned and her legs screamed in protest. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you, but I can't stay." A small hand grabbed her ankle, and Rachel crashed to the ground. She flipped onto her back to see the little girl from the merry-go-round crawling toward her, that too-wide smile still splitting her face. "We're so lonely," the girl said, and for just a moment, beneath the supernatural horror, Rachel heard genuine pain. Genuine sadness. "We've been alone for so long in the dark. Won't you stay? Won't you be our friend?" More children emerged from the darkness, circling Rachel where she lay. Their black eyes gleamed with desperate hunger, but also with something else, fear. They were afraid of being alone again, afraid of the darkness that had claimed them over a century ago. Rachel's hand closed around something in the grass, a piece of broken stone. In the moonlight that broke through the clouds, she could see it was a fragment of a gravestone, words barely visible. Innocent souls, never forgotten. Never forgotten. But they had been forgotten. The orphanage had burned. The church had covered it up, and these children had been buried in secret, their names lost, their existence erased. No one had mourned them. No one had remembered them. Until the construction workers had found them. Until the truth had been revealed. "I won't forget you," Rachel said, her voice shaking but clear. "I promise. I'll make sure everyone knows about you. About what happened. You won't be forgotten again." The children stopped moving. The little girl tilted her head, studying Rachel with those terrible black eyes. "Promise," she whispered, and now she sounded like what she was, a scared little girl. "I promise," Rachel repeated, and she meant it. The girl reached out and touched Rachel's forehead with one translucent finger. Cold flooded through Rachel's skull, and suddenly she saw it all. The fire, the screaming, the smoke, the locked doors, the desperate attempt to escape. The fear and confusion as they realized no one was coming to save them. The pain and terror of their deaths. And worse, the loneliness of lying forgotten in unmarked graves for over a century. When the vision ended, Rachel was sobbing, but the children were fading. The little girl's smile was different now, genuine, grateful, sad. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing us." And then they were gone, melting into the darkness like morning mist. Rachel lay in the grass, shaking and crying, until the first light of dawn began to creep across the sky. She kept her promise. By noon that day, Rachel had contacted every local news station, every historian, every memorial organization she could find. She told them about the children, about the forgotten victims, about the need for a proper memorial. She became their voice, their champion, their witness. The city eventually erected a memorial in the park, a beautiful sculpture of children playing, with all 37 names engraved on a plaque. It was dedicated 6 months after Rachel's encounter. She never worked another night shift at Riverside Park, but sometimes, on autumn evenings, she'd visit the memorial. And sometimes, when the light was just right, she'd see children playing there, translucent, peaceful, finally remembered, finally at rest.